So before I start my review of the movie game, I just wanted to point out something really weird about my GameCube copy. I bought this from the same guy who sold me Battle for Bikini Bottom, but for some really weird reason, the disc, like the front label is scraped off a little. And I don't understand why it's like that. The guy who sold it to me didn't offer any pictures and didn't really explain that it was going to have some of its front label scraped off, but yeah, that's what my copy looks like. And to my knowledge, it doesn't mess with the game at all, mainly because it's the front label. I'm pretty sure it just reads, this part. But yeah, that's a really odd thing I wanted to point out before I start the review, that my copy is scratched up on the front. That's really weird. Alright, so in this episode, I'm going to be taking a look at the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game. First off, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie film. Great freaking movie. The writing's really good, the animation is top notch, the voice acting is great, the soundtrack is pretty good, Gregor Norhal's score is pretty underappreciated, it's got great pacing and a decent running time. If you love the show, then I highly recommend watching the movie, if you haven't already done so. Heck, go rewatch it whenever you can. It's a great movie. I've seen it so many times that I could practically recite the entire film, way better than I can remember half the study guides I was given in school. I'm a fucking loser. Anyways, Battle for Bikini Bottom was a pretty decent success and got some solid reviews. Due to this, Nickelodeon recruited Heavy Iron Studios once again to work on the next SpongeBob game, which was actually going to be based off the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. And the movie game ended up getting released in late October like the last Heavy Iron game. However, this game came out just a few weeks before the actual movie was even in theaters. Yeah, so it's one of those early access movie to game adaptations. Also, yes, there is a PC version of the movie game, but just like Battle for Bikini Bottom, that was handled by AWE Games, who once again made it into a point-and-click adventure. So if you're into those type of games, then definitely check out the PC version. But if you're looking for another solid platformer, then just like Battle for Bikini Bottom, stick to the console versions. So let's dive right in. Pun not intended. To be expected, the game's plot pretty much follows the same story arc from the movie. Mr. Krabs is opening up a Krusty Krab 2, which SpongeBob expects to be the manager of, but it ends up going to Squidward, which makes SpongeBob depressed. Meanwhile, Plankton has come up with Plan Z, which involves him stealing King Neptune's crown and sending it to a place called Shell City so that he could blame Mr. Krabs for it, causing King Neptune to want to kill Mr. Krabs. Yep, straight up murder in a kids movie, game. However, SpongeBob intervenes and tells King Neptune that he'll go out of his way to go to Shell City and get his crown back, saving Mr. Krabs' life. So, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward... Pass! So SpongeBob and Patrick head to Shell City so that they could get the crown, save the town, and Mr. Krabs. Oh, and they have to save the town because King Neptune decides to freeze Mr. Krabs, which gives Plankton the opportunity to snatch the secret formula, which leads to the Chum Bucket becoming very successful with everyone getting these Chum Bucket helmets, which are actually mind control helmets that Plankton uses to take over Bikini Bottom so that he could build Planktopolis, which SpongeBob and Patrick have also got to stop. But those are just minor details. The plot of the game, just like the movie it was based on, is really solid. I don't really want to go that much detail for the plot because this was a pretty abridged version of the movie's plot, to be honest. I'll definitely go into much more detail about the actual movie whenever I review it in the distant future. I guess for now, I could talk about the game adaptation's presentation, which compared to Battle for Bikini Bottom is... kind of a downgrade. We rarely ever get any of these in-game cutscenes from the last game. Instead, almost every main cutscene is done via these cheap-looking slideshow cutscenes. Some of the images are actual screenshots from the movie, which must have been a pretty nice early treat since this game came out just before the movie hit theaters, like I mentioned before. But at some points, a few of the screen caps are really poor photoshopped images. I'm not sure how much of the actual movie Nickelodeon let Heavy Iron Studios have access to, but they certainly did try with all the material they were given. The dialogue and cutscenes are sometimes exact quotes from the movie, or just oddly rewritten or rephrased wordings. Is that a word? Google Docs isn't highlighting it as a misspelling, so yeah, wordings. If you've seen the movie a bajillion times like I have, you'll definitely know what I'm talking about. While the presentation is a little flat and just fucking cheap, the voice acting, much like the last game, is really good. I'd even say that this is the best voice acting out of all the Heavy Iron SpongeBob games. Aside from Tom Kenny, Bill Fagerbakke, and Doug Lawrence playing SpongeBob, Patrick, and Plankton respectively, we also have Jeffrey Tambor reprising his role as King Neptune from the movie, and they even got Scarlett Johansson to voice Mindy in this game. However, I think the biggest highlight for this game's voice acting is that Heavy Iron actually managed to get Clancy Brown to voice Mr. Krabs in this game. Major plus.
It started out as a simple order, a Krabby Patty with cheese. When the customer took a bite, no cheese! Ah, this has never happened before!
They did it, everybody. They got Clancy Brown. Round of applause. This is what you call redemption. They didn't get Alec Baldwin to voice Dennis in this game, but the replacement voice they got did a pretty decent job.
Don't worry, this'll only hurt a lot! Don't worry, this'll only hurt a lot! I love this job!
While a lot of the time we are hearing the actors just saying the same lines of dialogue from the movie, Heavy Iron actually got them to re-record the same lines. It's almost as if we're hearing different takes of the dialogue. It's pretty interesting. The voice acting in this game is pretty solid like the last Heavy Iron game. Mind you, there are still those intern VAs who slip in every now and then.
I can't believe this is happening here! It's horrible!
Hey, buddy, come on, wake up.
Why is that guy's sound quality so bad?
It's 8 in the morning. Closed. Go collect your friend and get out of here.
Who are you?
I'm not a lifeguard, but I play one on TV.
Oh yeah, they couldn't get the likeness for David Hasselhoff from the movie, so they just put this poser here. It kinda kills the whole Baywatch joke. But I guess sacrifices had to be made. This game did only take 1 year to make. I guess the cutscenes had to end up suffering because of this, but it's not that big a deal. To be honest, if you're gonna watch the plot of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, then you're gonna be watching the actual movie, not this game's cutscenes. I can excuse the cutscenes here for being kinda underwhelming. One last thing I'll say about the cutscenes is that I easily prefer the 3D cutscenes over the 2D slideshows. It would have been nice to see more of them, but oh well. Perhaps Heavy Iron figured that putting more focus into the gameplay instead of the cutscenes was more important. Pretty smart move. Guess I'll move on to that. Well, as you can see, the movie game appears to be playing almost exactly like Battle for Bikini Bottom, which is pretty neat. I'm sure it's the exact same gameplay because, well, this game is using the renderware engine like Battle for Bikini Bottom used. You may also remember this gameplay engine being used in Sonic Heroes. I don't know what that has to do with anything. However, there is a downgrade to be found, but I'm sure there is a decent enough explanation for it. You can play as 2 different characters in this game, and obviously it's SpongeBob and Patrick. SpongeBob can acquire all the familiar movesets from the last game, and also maintains most of his default moves from Battle for Bikini Bottom. His spin attack is back, but instead of using a jellyfishing net, he's using his karate gloves. Later on, SpongeBob can obtain his bowling move again, which works just like it did before, plus near the end of the game, he could get his rocket attack back. In Battle for Bikini Bottom, it was a bubble attack, but in the movie game, it's an electric guitar missile. It functions and controls just about the same. Very cool. Patrick also gets a few upgrades for this game. His belly slam attack is now changed to a spin attack like SpongeBob, and later on he could reacquire his slam attack and his ability to pick up objects. His biggest upgrade is a cartwheel attack that gives him a fire shield that could bash his way through enemies and items. It's a really fun move that's also really great for speeding your way through shit. You could switch characters and levels by using a porta potty as opposed to a bus stop light from the last game. One fun concept that this game introduces are leveling up their characters' abilities. Throughout the levels you'll come across these weights that are spread around like the shiny objects from the last game. If you collect a large amount of manpower from these weights, you'll get an audio cue letting you know that you could upgrade one of Patrick or SpongeBob's abilities. This can make their special moves and attacks become much stronger and way more fun to use. You could even use the manliness bars to get more health. Also, much like Battle for Bikini Bottom, no life system, so no game overs. Huge plus. Good job, Heavy Iron. So the gameplay seems to have been given a huge boost compared to the last game, but just where exactly is that downgrade I mentioned earlier? Well, if you saw my last review, you may have already figured out what it is, which is Sandy Cheeks is not a playable character in this game, which really sucks because she was always my favorite character to play as. And with this game introducing leveling up abilities, Sandy seriously could have benefited from that. It would have been so awesome to see Sandy playable again and to be much better than before. But I guess Heavy Iron had to remain faithful to the source material this game is based off of. I mean, Sandy only really had 3 or 4 small cameos in the actual movie, so I guess it would have been too cost effective to have Sandy be around more in the plot just to change things up a bit. It sucks, but I can at least understand why Sandy couldn't be playable in this game. Oh well, maybe next time. Hopefully. Alright, so when it comes to the level design, it's decent. It's a lot more straightforward platforming segments that are pretty similar to the way the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard was designed in the last game. My biggest complaint about the level designs in this game are how there aren't a whole lot of open areas. You're usually closed off by invisible walls or bottomless pits. You're typically just moving from point A to point B. It's a lot more simpler than Battle for Bikini Bottom, which I guess I'm trying to say. A lot of the game mechanics are recycled from Battle for Bikini Bottom, including the wall jumping segments. Instead of smashing tiki heads, we have these various boxes and these TNT barrels. Graphically, it's on par with Battle for Bikini Bottom, and that's a decent positive. The last game was more based off environments from the show, meanwhile the movie game is basing its environments off one scene in, well, the movie. For the GameCube, it looks pretty dang good. The levels are all colorful and full of a lot of great visual gags, like in Battle for Bikini Bottom. So while the game's level layouts aren't as open or engaging as the last game, I can at least praise the game's art style for looking pretty stellar. You're welcome, Jaden. Another thing I could really praise about the levels is the music. Much like Battle for Bikini Bottom, Heavy Iron Studios rehired the same music company to compose music for this game, and while it's not as fresh as Battle for Bikini Bottom, it's still a really solid video game soundtrack. I'm pretty sure this was composed by the same people who did Battle for Bikini Bottom. I mean, it's the same music company at least. The manuals for both games do list the composer's names, so here they are. A lot of the music in this game sounds more orchestral, if that's the word I'm looking for. It's still trying to be atmospheric with a lot of the music fitting each of the level's environments, while also trying to remain faithful to the score music used in the actual movie. But the music isn't as catchy as the last game, especially in the later half when we get to levels like Now That We're Men or Shell City Dead Ahead. Thankfully, this is only a minor complaint. While I don't think the music is as memorable or catchy, it's still pretty dang good. It's a pretty decent mix of orchestral and acoustic sounding music in a lot of areas. It's not as great as Battle for Bikini Bottom's soundtrack, but it is a pretty nice companion piece to that game's music. Hey, at least the movie game's sliding music kicks ass just like the last game. Back to the actual game, while most of the levels are more plainly about going from point A to point B, there are still some secrets to discover if you do try to explore. Instead of collecting golden spatulas like in Battle for Bikini Bottom, we're instead looking for Goofy Goober tokens, which I will get to later. You see, in certain spots of the levels there are these warp areas, which can be used to transport to these mini levels. These consist of platforming challenges for Patrick, enemy battle arenas for SpongeBob, and these SpongeBall challenges. I think they all speak for themselves. The platforming challenges involve Patrick jumping from block to block to reach the Goofy Goober token near the end. And every new platforming challenge you reach in later levels become progressively harder, but still beatable. It's good fun. The enemy arenas are kind of the opposite for me. This involves SpongeBob using his abilities to defeat a large amount of enemies, which are being sent out in 3 or 4 different swarms. Like the platforming challenge, the further you get through the game, each battle arena gets progressively harder. It gets so obnoxious after a while. All this for a bunch of stupid Goofy Goober tokens. Then there are the SpongeBall challenges, which involve SpongeBob in ball mode rolling around a few obstacle courses. This can either be really amusing / fun, or really frustrating / confusing. Well, it's only confusing for a while, but after a few deaths, you should be able to make it through these levels just fine. These are alright. Thankfully, like the last game, we do have unlimited lives. Any platformer that does this automatically gets extra credit. There are also a few other stage objectives you could do to get more tokens, most notably the watermelon puzzles for Patrick that make a return in this game, and they're annoying. They all require absolute precision. It's so tedious at points. However, there are 2 other types of levels aside from the main ones. First up are the Paddy Wagon levels. These involve SpongeBob and Patrick driving down a linear race course leading to a finish line, and there are also a few of these levels that have laps to go around. These levels are okay. The controls for the Paddy Wagon feel a little odd, though that's probably because most driving mechanics in video games are made to where you're basically steering a long box. But controlling the Paddy Wagon is like controlling a circle. It takes some getting used to. I do really like the subtle detail where when the wagon gets damaged, it starts to deteriorate. I like whenever Heavy Iron works in small details like that. The second type of levels, and probably my favorite, are the sliding levels. These speak for themselves. SpongeBob and Patrick end up sliding through 3 of these levels in a bathtub, seashell, and even King Neptune's crown. These are a ton of fun and very adrenaline heavy, though that's probably the music's doing. Seriously, the sliding music is fucking great in this game. However, I'm not too crazy about the last sliding level. It's well designed, but I'm not really feeling the appearances of the Cyclops in the background. His size seems really unproportionate to his surroundings. He seems so tiny and not very menacing. It's only a minor complaint, but I feel like this could have been done a little bit better. At least the first 2 sliding levels are spectacular. By the way, about more than a decade ago, I would desperately look around in my nearest movie gallery for Xbox copies of Battle for Bikini Bottom and the movie game. I never found a single copy of Battle for Bikini Bottom, but I found a PS2 copy of the movie game, which was frustrating because I didn't own that system. Still, I would just glance at that PS2 copy of the movie game from top to bottom, front to back, and whenever I saw that screen cap of SpongeBob and Patrick in a bathtub and saw some gameplay footage of that particular sliding level, I was just like, sold. Yes, seeing SpongeBob and Patrick sliding around in a bathtub made me hyped to play this game. Oh, the mystical mind of being a child. The boss battles for this game are pathetically easy. Seriously, all the bosses in this game are so easy to figure out. The final boss is an exception, but I'll talk about that later. But every other boss can be painfully short. Not a whole lot of thought was put into these bosses. Literally 2 minutes into a boss fight, you'll be like, oh wait, I see how this works. Yeah, this is gonna be over in like 10 seconds. It really sucks too. None of these bosses really stand out. Oh well. Alright, let's get to the bullshit. One of the reasons why you beat a boss fight or complete a level task is to get the aforementioned Goofy Goober tokens, the power stars of this game essentially. It would be kinda smart if they were used for progressing towards the later levels, however this game doesn't have hub areas, it just has the level select in the pause menu. Okay, then what is the point of collecting tokens? About that. In order to gain access to newer abilities for SpongeBob and Patrick, you have to collect a specific amount of Goofy Goober tokens, otherwise, Mindy isn't gonna give you the power-up. This fucking bitch. Pardon my French, but what the fuck is the matter with you? SpongeBob and Patrick are trying to save Bikini Bottom, and you're holding back new abilities because we don't have enough Goofy Goober tokens? You greedy sluts! It is so irritating whenever you enter a new level, only to get immediately greeted by Mindy telling you, I'm sorry SpongeBob, but you don't have enough Goofy Goober quarters to shoot missiles from a guitar. What the fuck, Mindy? I had this happen to me so many goddamn times when I first played this game. Hell, I'm pretty sure this happened like 4 times when I was recording footage for this game. Why does she need these tokens? Is she a drug dealer? Does she need tokens to stay afloat in this world? Well, so much for mermaid magic. This leads to a pretty major issue I have with this game. You're always forced to go back into previous levels to earn more Goofy Goober tokens just to pay off Mindy. There is way too much backtracking to be done in this game, and I feel like that kinda hurts the experience in a way. What the hell is your damage, Mindy? Just give us the new powers and let us pass. You're such a jerk. I don't care if your voice actress looks like this. There's no excuse for this. Fuck you, Mindy. Whatever. I basically skimmed through all the levels in this game because they're pretty basically designed. I do recommend checking them out on your own, even if Mindy gets in the way. However, there is one level I'd like to briefly discuss, if I can, which is the last level in the game, Planktopolis. In this level, we're treated to—
I'm sorry, SpongeBob. You don't have enough Goofy Goober tokens for—
Mindy! As I was saying, Planktopolis is the final level you go to in this game, and it is pure hell. Well, on the first playthrough, most definitely. This level throws everything at you. So many of the most difficult enemies in this game inhabit this level. There's numerous amounts of plankton robots just firing so much shit at you. And the level just gets progressively worse as you venture through it. You're thrown so many obstacles and even obstacle courses to jump through. You gotta have SpongeBob jump from wall to wall on numerous hallway segments. You gotta precisely blow your way through a few enemies on conveyor belts. Then there's this section. This fucking section. Oh my fucking god, I can't believe they put this here. You're supposed to be running and jumping on sinking platforms and these conveyor belts. Meanwhile, there's like 10 fucking enemies shooting at you, so you've got like 10 million things coming your way, all while you're being suspended over a lava pit, so it makes it even more nerve-wracking to get through. On my first playthrough, I spent almost half an hour getting through this area. This frustration is too damn high. Why is this in a game that's meant to be played by children? How did they expect me to avoid all this crap? I can't just knock attacks back at enemies. What the fuck? I can? What? Yeah, apparently a specific upgrade can let SpongeBob use his karate gloves to knock missiles and projectiles back at enemies. Are you fucking kidding me? Why did I put myself through so much hell then? Screw this, I'm taking my time with this garbage. This is shit. This is so shit. The person who put this crap section right here is a fucking asshole. I can't fucking believe this crap. So after you get past this section, you defeat a pretty decent mini-boss, then you're taken towards a final paddy wagon mission where you have to drive your way back to the Krusty Krab and...
I can bring back the paddy wagon, but you'll need more Goofy Goober tokens.
What? Are you fucking kidding me? We're at the end of the game, Mindy! Get your fucking shit together! I've backtracked through this game enough! I've done my duty! Screw you! Is there a cheat code to access the end of this game? Here we go. Show all question mark task. Fuck you, Mindy. Alright, final boss time. And it's with the mind-controlled King Neptune. This is the only boss fight that I found pretty worthwhile, mainly because it actually offers a decent challenge. You gotta reflect Neptune's laser back at him and also send a rocket at his head, all while avoiding his attacks being shot out of his kind staff thing. There are checkpoints for each phase, and each phase also gets progressively difficult. It's a solid final boss fight. I also really like the heavy metal sounding music in the first two phases. The people of Sabre Music really outdid themselves here. However, that song doesn't play during the third and final phase of King Neptune. The reason being, well, first off, no, I am not messing with the audio. The game actually plays the song Goofy Goober Rock from the movie during the final phase of King Neptune. Props to Heavy Iron for getting that attention to detail right. What else is there to mention? The 100% award? I have not gotten it, whatever it is. Well, in levels you can find these green glowing treasure chests, which can unlock several extras in the pause menu. These include costumes, cutscenes, trailers from the movie, and even voice clips. Alrighty then. I guess just go find all treasure chests to unlock all secrets in this game. There's no cheat for me to use to unlock everything and see what happens at 100%. So sorry I can't show that off. I mean, I'm not Gerard the Completionist after all. I gotta wrap this up. So the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game is pretty dang good. There are aspects that I dislike, for example the backtracking to find more tokens, but despite that, the game is a whole lot of fun to play through. The inclusion of character upgrades make the levels way more fun to traverse through, the art style is really good, the music is really solid, the cutscenes are mostly lukewarm, but the voice acting is still pretty dang good. All around, the movie game is a solid platformer and a pretty good follow-up for Battle for Bikini Bottom. If you liked Heavy Iron's first SpongeBob game, then definitely go out and find a copy of the movie game on Xbox, PS2, or GameCube. My biggest piece of advice is, look out for those Goofy Goober tokens. 50. You need 50 to beat the game. Just throwing that out there. Have fun. I'll give the SpongeBob movie the game a 7 out of 10. While Battle for Bikini Bottom initially got some pretty decent scores, the movie game actually got some really positive reviews from critics, and some of them even considered it better than Battle for Bikini Bottom. I can see why, but I personally prefer the design and overall quality of Battle for Bikini Bottom, despite the lack of Clancy Brown. Originally, Battle for Bikini Bottom sold really well, but I don't think the movie game reached the same level of success, mainly because it never got any sort of Player's Choice or Platinum Edition release, kind of like, you know, what happened with Battle for Bikini Bottom. And my guess could be plausible because Heavy Iron Studios never got a chance to make a third SpongeBob game until 5 years after the movie game. So come back next time on Cooper's Perspective when I decide to end this little SpongeBob marathon by looking at the third and so far last Heavy Iron developed SpongeBob game, SpongeBob's Truth or Square. And we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching.